Today, we're going to look at what your beliefs and hidden rules about hard work are, then what they're costing you, how you can start recognizing this in your day-to-day life, and then we'll end on small achievable steps you can take to start choosing what you truly want without dropping your standards, of course. Before I tell you about me and my personal story, I just want to share a few quick housekeeping items to make sure that we get the most out of this session. The first item is questions. Now, please do feel free to ask questions during the session. You can raise your hand and unmute, but we are pressed for time. So I may have to come back to you after the session. Adesi might be able to coordinate me responding to some of the questions via email. And then also, remember, I can't see the chat. So please, it's not personal if I don't get back to anything that you ask in the chat. But whether it's in this session or afterwards, I will make sure your questions get answered. In terms of speaking up and sharing, I know some of you might be in the office today. I don't know how many of you are at home. So you will be invited to participate by a meeting, and you will be invited to share and engage. Of course, if you're in the office and it's not comfortable for you to do so, feel free to use the chat. But if you're at home, you're very much invited to just unmute and speak. And then please have a pen and paper, because I'm going to ask you 12 reflection questions. So if you could have, notebook to hand or something like that. And then lastly, I just want us to commit to creating an optimal space for the next, I think we've got 50 minutes, 45 minutes left. So in keeping with the theme of this session, let's work together to ensure that we're playing a part in creating psychological safety. And that includes confidentiality. So anything that is shared in this space stays in this space. And remember, there is no perfection required in this session. We are all human. Let's make room for our humanity. There is no performance expected here. I know you're all at work, but in this space for the next 45 minutes, there's no performance or perfection expected. So it's great to meet you all. I'm Louise Karingwe. I'm a coach, consultant, and business psychologist with nearly 2 decades of experience. And that includes consulting. My background, I first started in management consulting and then pivoted into HR, where I've worked in investment banking, technology, and local government organizations. Since becoming a certified coach 9 years ago, I started a coaching business where I help women detach their worth, peace, and identity from productivity and achievement, so that they can design a values-driven life, the life that they truly want, and have the courage to go out and live it. But much like all of you, behind this professional background, which is not necessarily the most important, especially in keeping with the theme of today, there's also a personal story, and I'd love to share that with you today. For me, for a long time, I moved through the world in constant motion, because life had shown me that to be valued and for my existence to matter, I had to be spectacular. I had to be busy all the time and externally accomplished. Being valued and approved of meant that I was safe, socially, I was safe financially. But I didn't realize that my brain was running this equation at all. All I knew was that I was always busy, overthinking, and in constant motion. I didn't ever stop or pause in a meaningful way. So I didn't even realize that this was why I was always exhausted, or that I was even exhausted. This equation or rule, it showed up in my professional life, right? Not just my personal life. And it made me feel like I always had to prove myself, which meant everything had to be spectacular. I could never get anything wrong. I had to get everything right, because there was no room for my mistakes. Mistakes would not be forgiven. And this proving meant that I worked longer hours than others. I worked weekends, late nights, and I didn't really claim my free time in the evenings and the weekends as my own. When I wasn't in work, I was basically recovering from work rather than experiencing true restoration or building the life I wanted. There were layers and layers of pressure on me. Pressure from not being able to ever make a mistake, right, or drop the ball. Pressure from the fear of what would happen if I didn't live up to the highest of standards and expectations. Pressure from the hard work itself. and then pressure to do it all alone. That is a lot. I thought that this was what it took to survive and be of value. I thought this is what hard work was meant to be. Until one day I was at a client's site when I was a management consultant. I was working on this process remodel in Microsoft Visio. And at some point, I looked at the clock and it was 10 p.m. And I'd been working on that process redesign since 6 p.m. And I believed that if I just fixed a few more things, it would produce something really good and everyone would be happy, my company, my clients. But a few hours later, I looked at the clock and it was now midnight. And I'd not only finished redesigning the process flow, I thought that it would be a good idea to create a PowerPoint deck alongside it as well. So it's now 2 a.m. and PowerPoint crashes and I lost most of the work anyway. And I was frustrated. I was really angry with myself that I pushed so hard and gone beyond what was even necessary. I believe that if I just produced something that was brilliant and far above, expectations, that it would finally earn me some sort of seal of approval. You see, the hidden rule that was driving my behavior with that piece of work was that if I didn't suffer in some way, if I didn't pay some sort of price, I hadn't really worked hard, and therefore it wouldn't really count as an achievement. And also, quite critically, I wouldn't be deserving of any acknowledgement or praise that came my way off the back of it. So I went home exhausted and angry and just started to question whether all this effort and striving was worth it, whether it was necessary. And in fact, I've been feeling tired for a long time, but because tiredness had become my norm, I wasn't really feeling it. But the next morning, I kept thinking about it. And I started to think about my colleagues who were asleep while I was doing all this work. They were coming back into the office the next morning, refreshed and probably able to perform better than me, actually, because they'd got good rest. And they'd spend their evenings on self-care, going for runs, enjoying life with family or friends, doing the things that they enjoyed and just nurturing a life outside of work. But the thing I noticed is that they weren't seen as any less capable or deserving than me for doing that, for creating space for ease in their life. So through all these reflections, I started to see hard work differently. I realized that my form of hard work was not really just about passion or contribution like I thought it was. It was also very much about being seen as good enough. And that was costing me a lot. I'd been completely overlooking myself. I was working hard at the expense of myself. And surely, friends, nothing is worth that. I was struggling to sleep, struggling to be present, and I was starting to have some health-related challenges related to stress. So much of my hard work was survival mode in disguise, and fear was at the heart of it. But I didn't want to live a fear-based life. I didn't want that. I wanted to live a life propelled by courage, love, and boldness. So my definition of hard work had to change. And this leads to the first question I want to ask you, or technically the second, because the first one was very much at the beginning. So please take a couple of moments to reflect on this question. Again, I emphasize there is no right or wrong, no performance expected. Just try to be as transparent with yourself as you can. And if you feel free, unmute and share in the chat. So the question is, how do you personally define hard work today? And how do you know when you're working hard? What's the evidence you see in your life that you're working hard? So I'll give you just a few moments to note that down. And if you feel comfortable, you can unmute as well.
Thank you.
And you can put it in the chat.
So no, thank you so much. That's been really, really great. I would also help you to, I know you said that you can't see the chat. So please use the chat. I can pick up your messages and read it out to Lou. It's been really great so far. I think hard work today, because from my perspective, if I can speak, there's been since the pandemic, there's been a lot of awareness on well-being and taking time, reflecting and not burnout. So I think for professionals now, even though you're working hard, a lot of us are still taking time to avoid burning out. So hard work is hard work, but I think we are also putting our well-being first. And there's also been a lot of, and social media helps as well. Depending on what you follow on social media, you can follow like people like you or other inspirational speakers that encourage you to work hard, but also rest. Nothing yet in the chat, but if you want to
Yeah,
unmute, I can keep quiet.
yeah. I really do encourage you to take the time to think about it. Like, so to be very clear today, folks, we're not going to go as deep as possible in any of these questions. The idea is just to get you to start thinking about it, to trigger thinking, okay? So this is probably one of the most important questions that I'll ask you today, because it's about your own personal definition of hard work, not what society says, not what work says, not what other people have said. It's your own personal definition. Uh, so yeah, I'll move on again. If no one shares, it's completely fine. Just because you know there's not so much time. Okay, so I took time to really think about this question for myself during my journey, and once I started reflecting and questioning the hidden rules I had about hard work, there was a huge perspective shift that happened. And here's the truth, everyone. Working hard, plus all those extra hours I put in, did not increase the value of what I had done. It only increased my overwhelm and my exhaustion. It also did not increase my value as a human, because our value is not determined by the things we achieve, but by who we are. It's inherent and it's non-negotiable. And so I decided that it wasn't just enough to just become aware of the ways my unhelpful beliefs about hard work were negatively affecting me. I also needed to identify a new definition and new rules that I was going to live by. Before we move on to that, though, I've got another question for you before I share what that new definition was and how I did it. And the question is, in what ways are your beliefs about hard work helping you? And how could they be affecting you negatively or costing more than you truly want to pay? Again, as with all the questions, the most important thing is that you note something down, because this is for yourself. And if you're comfortable, you can unmute or share in the chat. I'll give you just a few moments for this question. In what ways are your beliefs and definitions about hard work helping you? And how could they be affecting you negatively or costing you things that you don't really deep down want to pay? And we need to make time for this question as well, because the reality is that many of us have been conditioned, like I said, to overwork and overextend. Our definition of hard work is often overworking, and it's often at the cost of our well-being, life satisfaction, enjoyment, our health, relationships sometimes, and even the life we actually want to build. And because hard work has become so synonymous with virtue, especially for Black women, we don't always question it. We praise it, we reward it, and we often call it discipline, ambition, commitment, or excellence. But hard work is actually code for other things, especially, like I said, for Black women. It's often code for working way harder than others. There was a 2022 report by CodePal that found that 76% of UK Black professionals said that Black employees have to work harder to advance, compared with only 30% of white professionals and 42% of Asian professionals. So you're doing double often what others are doing. Of course, you will be exhausted, or that could lead to exhaustion, but it can also lead you sacrificing your dreams and yourself in the process. Hard work can sometimes be code for being in a constant proving cycle to show that you deserve to be here. So another report in 2022 by the Fawcett Society showed that 48% of Black African women said they had been criticized for behaviors other colleagues get away with, compared with 29% of white British women. So you feel that your window for making a mistake or even just getting the smallest things wrong is much narrower. Hard work can be code for being afraid to, like I said, make a mistake, but also just becoming accustomed and used to living in overwhelm. And then lastly, something that I see with many of my coaching clients is your hard work means you end up carrying other people's weight and responsibilities. And what rewards can tend to come along with this type of hard work? Usually more hard work, because when you make the bar for your excellence constant hard work, others will hold you to that bar. And they may even keep raising it for you, which keeps you stuck in this hard work cycle and this self-neglect, this place of self-neglect. Other things that it can attract are your willingness to sacrifice yourself with this hard work means that other people get to achieve their goals and reduce their own responsibilities, as I mentioned before, by putting it on you because you're the hard worker, you're willing to do double and do everything. It can also lead to less care for yourself and from others, because when you're just the hard worker, you're only functioning or functional, and you can lose touch with what restores you, and sometimes even getting the support from other people and being seen as human, because you're just seen as this person that functions and works hard. And some of the most common hidden rules that are upholding this include that your worth depends on achievement and external praise. So all your output becomes evidence of your value. Another key hidden rule I see a lot with my clients is that rest must be earned. So rest becomes very hard to take, especially when you've spent years finding value in achieving. And I know Adesi mentioned that since lockdown, things are better, but we're seeing things actually reverse. A lot of the ground we gained during lockdown is being lost. And I don't want to see Black women face the brunt of that. Some other common hidden rules I hear a lot are that, this is about your family, you must not embarrass them, you have to work hard to achieve whatever it is, and that you have to prove that you deserve to be here. And critically, you can't give anyone a reason to doubt your competence. So all this leads to not just hard work, but a level of self-neglect. And like I said, these rules, they often began as protection. They were absorbed from your environment. This isn't you, it's not your fault, it's not even about you, where you got these beliefs from or this attitude from. You're just trying to survive and you're trying to protect yourself. You become accustomed to self-neglect though, and a gradual disconnect from your needs and your emotions, your values, your limits, your truth, and sometimes even your body, knowing what restores you. These realizations of what hard work was costing me and where some of these beliefs have come from helped me. And subsequently, I've helped my clients as well bring these rules out into the light of day, because awareness is really the starting point of all of this. And in that process, I identified what I liked and what I didn't like about my hard work rules. And like I said, I chose a new set of rules. This reassessment and evaluation of how I was actually seeing hard work, it didn't just shift my attitudes towards hard work, it changed my approach to my whole life. I stopped working weekends and evenings unless it was absolutely necessary, and unless it was required by the collective as well, and unless it was tied to my personal goals and ambitions. I started to notice new hobbies and interests that I had, which made way for me to use strengths and see strengths that I had previously ignored and didn't realize I had. And it influenced my relationships too, because I started to see relationships that were demanding that I be constantly living up to impossible standards, or that I stay in this cycle of always proving. Because relationships shouldn't require your perfection and your performance. The right relationships only require your presence. My health started to improve as well, because rest became non-negotiable. And since turning 40, this is only increasingly key for me and non-negotiable. So all of this meant, rather than waiting for work to give me room for these things, I approached work by asking, how can I design my work to fit around these things and to make room for these things? And to get to this place, I'd established 5 key shifts, which I call the Excellence in Ease method. And I'm going to share this with you today. I hope that some of it will help. The first shift in the Excellence in Ease method was to go beyond is to go beyond what you want to achieve externally and to establish how you want life to feel and also what you want to experience in life. The other day, someone actually asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And we usually expect someone to reply with a work objective or an externally based achievement. And that's what that person thought that I would say. But I actually said, you know what, I prefer to think about my future ambitions along the lines of how do I want to be feeling about life and what do I want to be experiencing in it? And they paused and they said that they were always looking at life through the lens of productivity and achievement, but never really stopped to think about the quality of their day-to-day life and how they were experiencing life or how they were even feeling about it. And I know you've probably heard this said before, but there is a reason why we are called human beings and not human doings. But somewhere along the line, modern society has made us lose the art of the being and emphasized and pedestalized the doing. But the truth is, you can have the perfect calendar, the perfect routine, the perfect career, yet still be underliving or under being, which isn't a real word. I made it up, but it fits for this discussion we're having. But like I said earlier, none of this is your fault. You have been conditioned by every social system we exist in to produce, optimize, and keep moving. Because as we explored earlier, if we don't, then your very survival is on the line, right? Well, no, because a well-organized life is not the same as a well-lived life. And a well-lived life is harder to experience when you're unknowingly in constant survival mode or proving mode. So my next question to you that I'll give you some time to reflect on again is, imagine you are 85 years old and looking back at your life, what would you regret not feeling or experiencing? Again, just take some time to note it down. It's personal to you. But if you feel comfortable and okay with it, you can also unmute or put your reflections in the chat.
Hi, everyone. We have some comments in the chat. To the previous question, Althea said, on the working hard, try to and work smarter, not harder. Providing a strong work ethic and discipline, but not yet found the balance. Tinu, do you want to speak? Is that where your camera is? No, okay. Maureen said, thank you, Lou. It's been helpful listening to you share on this. It's something I'm also learning to prioritize self-care and not feel like I need to know or be involved in everything, as that's where my hard work tends to come from, especially in the consulting space.
Yes, I definitely can relate to the consultant space piece. And this is, I know it sounds cheesy, but it really is a journey. It's not something that we'll get to overnight, but with consistently reflecting on these things, and I'm going to take you through an exercise in a few moments that will support you in that, in consistently reflecting on these things and re-anchoring ourselves back to what really matters to us, we can actually create better career strategies, better life strategies, and make better decisions ultimately. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's a journey for all of us. I've definitely not fully arrived, folks. Okay, so I'm just going to move us on. Thanks for sharing, everyone. So the second shift as part of Excellence in Ease was I established my personal definition of what hard work was. I completely rewrote the old rules I had. And this included unlearning and rejecting two key hidden rules that were sustaining how I approached hard work. The first hidden rule was that hard work required some sort of suffering and self-neglect, because if I hadn't worked hard, I really suffered and gone through it, then I wasn't deserving of the recognition that would come with it. And I redefined that as hard work is any way that I am personally being challenged or stretched in a way that helps me grow, both professionally and personally, towards my goals and ambitions that I want to achieve in the future. It is not externally defined by other people, but by myself. I know when I'm working hard, and that's sufficient for me. In addition, hard work, my agreement and my rule is that hard work cannot cost me more than I'm willing to pay and cannot compromise the non-negotiable elements of my life that matter to me most. And health, which had previously, I'd played with my sleep, I'd played with my health. And when I started having stress-related health challenges, it really brought to the fore how pivotal health is. And that became a non-negotiable for me. So hard work could no longer compromise that. I also defined when I would work hard. It would only be for things that were worthwhile and helped to meaningfully advance my end goals, which I'm going to talk about shortly. And it had to be necessary. I couldn't just create it for no reason. The second hidden rule that I rewrote was that hard work is always necessary to earn my place and deserve recognition. It's very linked to the one I've just shared, but it was possibly the most damaging of all of them, because all of your current abilities and strengths and know-how that you have today, they make you qualified and deserving of your place. It's not depending on some future hard work you have to, carry out, or some future skill you need to get. You have already come so far and achieved so much. And to be honest, when we feel that, we've still got to prove something, we still got to carry out this hard work, and to be deserving of recognition, you have to work hard for something in the future. That is often a never-ending target, because even when we do achieve whatever it is through hard work, we create another target for it. And really, like I mentioned, I decided that, hard work was not always necessary. And sometimes when I share this with people, they're surprised, because again, society has told us that hard work is always necessary. And I have some stories for you, which I won't share today, but hard work is just one of many options. What was necessary was the desired impact I wanted to have, continuous learning, and alignment with my values and my purpose. Additionally, because hard work was no longer so necessary all the time, it gave room for hard work to come in seasons. Because it's okay if sometimes I feel stretched and challenged, and in other seasons, not so much. It doesn't invalidate my existence or the fact that I'm deserving of certain things. And this opened up my mind to 7 other alternatives to hard work. If you're anything like me, hard work may be your automatic response to achieving your outcomes. But I want to share with you just 7 other things you can choose. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to think about which one could you do more. And the first one is my favorite. It's doing nothing. Yes. If you are a hard worker, this sounds shocking. It sounds crazy to say. But doing nothing is not only backed by science, but it creates what I call space. Because the misconception is that we can only make progress when we're working. But the brain doesn't necessarily work like this. The truth is that the brain works even when we step away. And you may have heard people talk about how when they're in the shower, ideas come to them and things like that. And that's because, as I said, when we move away from the physical and active doing, our brain is still working. And actually, space or rest often allows us to continue processing in the background. And that processing that happens when we step away creates clarity, curiosity, ideation, problem solving, the ability to see the bigger picture again. And it gives you the chance to ask these 4 questions that I always challenge my clients to reflect on, which is, does this need to be done? Does this need to be done by you? Does it need to be done now? And is it that this is maybe being driven by fear? Because when you're in constant performance-based striving, can everyone still hear me? I'm getting a notification about my connection. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear and see you.
Great. Okay,
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Because when you're in constant performance-based striving, your brain is focused on survival. And so it shuts down all of this exploration, asking some of these 4 questions. You just go straight into working hard without yet asking, hold on a moment, does this even need to be done? Does it need to be done by me? The second alternative to hard work is something I call planned in action experiments. And this is slightly different to doing nothing, because this is where you decide upon the amount of time a certain task or project is worth up front. How much is it actually worth to you? And you decide what you're going to put into it. And then when that time is up, you just stop. You save the work and you step away instead of sliding into any more overwork. And when you stop, you ask yourself, what happens if putting in more time and effort is not your next move for progressing this piece of work? And this always helps to reveal whether the work truly actually needs more time or something else completely. Because maybe you don't need to invest more time. Maybe perhaps you just need clarity. You need feedback, better tools, or a clearer brief from someone. And the third alternative that can replace making hard work your automatic response is collaboration, delegation, and support from other people. In other words, sharing the load. And the huge benefit to this is that it builds your interpersonal and communication skills more deeply. And it also enhances your emotional intelligence. And I'm also a certified EQ coach. And we often think that by asking, we're maybe lessening ourselves. Actually, it forces us to build connection, to exhibit some vulnerability, to enhance our communication skills. So it's a critical EQ skill to have, asking for support and collaboration and delegation. Another alternative is, instead of thinking that you have to overextend all the time, use and build what you already have. This can be incredibly valuable, and it's not lazy. It's not the easy option, because sometimes hard work will make you think you've always got to get something extra. When actually the truth is, you have put, like I said earlier, we want to emphasize this, you have put so much work and effort already to develop what you have today. You know, what was the point in doing that if you can't rely on it now? I once worked with a client, and she wanted to make a career transition. And she thought that if she acquired these qualifications and certifications, it would validate this transition and she would get more respect and she'd be deserving of it. But these qualifications were only going to require more work, more financial investment, and evenings away from her family. And ultimately, she was going to lose sleep with this, undoubtedly. And so I helped her reassess whether she really needed to put all that work into getting those certifications. And we saw that it wasn't really necessary. It would have been nice, but it was not necessary. In reality, very few people in that field even had those qualifications. So instead of spending time and money studying, we reevaluated it, and it allowed her to dig deeper into her current and existing experience and strengths so that she could position herself for that career transition. And, you know, the beauty of this was that it helped her practice selling herself, and it also got her better acquainted with her career achievements to date. You know, how often do we dig into our CV and really pull out everything we've done and think about our strengths and our brand and what we can really bring? We don't often do that. And if she'd just gone to the qualification option, she wouldn't have had that experience. Ironically, this did not require as much hard work. She didn't have to lose sleep. She didn't have to have time away from her family. But it didn't matter, because her focus was not just working hard. It was making that desired impact that I mentioned earlier. And the fifth alternative to hard work is actually just saying no and setting boundaries. And so often we can avoid doing this and just move into hard work because we don't want to have to set boundaries and say no. And I know it can be challenging, but the benefit of this is that it frees up more of our time to say yes to the things that matter to us. And again, we come back to that communication, emotional intelligence, and confidence skills that it helps. And the last other option that we can choose, without just always automatically choosing hard work, is to just explore what matters to you. Because this is something that, you know, if you do, every time you want to move into hard work, you can say, well, does this align to what matters to me? You know, does this actually help me achieve the things that I want to achieve? And therefore, is it really necessary? And doing this is an exercise that is key to do regularly. Oh, what is actually important to me? What matters to me? What are my values and my vision for my life? And is this hard work actually harming it or helping it? And many times when I work with clients, they realize that the thing they're working so hard on is actually hindering what I call end goals. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And then the last alternative is becoming more self-attuned. You know, Hard work can be used to hide emotions. And I mentioned it can also be used to avoid situations earlier, like so we don't want to set boundaries and say no. But it can be used to also avoid certain emotions. We've all heard of people who bury themselves in their work when they're going through something. But when hard work stopped being the only option I chose and was no longer my default response to achieving progress, I was able to start using self-attunement and self-awareness instead. Again, critical elements of emotional intelligence. Because as Black women, our emotions are so often taken from us. We can be judged, misunderstood, and condemned for having them. If we hurt, we're weak. If we express ourselves, we're intimidating and angry. If we're quiet, we're unapproachable. And if we have needs, we're difficult. So hard work can, of course, easily become this perfect hiding place for our emotions. But the truth is that you are allowed to have an inner life that receives care, not just an outer life that performs. You are allowed to have an inner life that receives care, not just an outer life that performs. Your emotions hold key data that, if tapped into, will ironically improve your performance actually. And it will help you achieve what I call sustainable performance. And no matter what the hidden rules of hard work tell you, you weren't meant to do it alone, especially if you're doing double, right? If you're doing more than what everyone else is doing, as the data shows us, many Black women believe, then sharing the load, creating community, and finding support become paramount. So I'm going to ask you two reflective questions now, and I'll give you again space to do that. Please, this is a space of freedom. If you want to unmute, you can. If you want to just note it down and do some inner reflection, you can. And likewise, if you want to put it in the chat, you can. So what emotions could overwork, overachievement, or overextending be hiding? When I've done this work with clients in the past, when we've dug deeper, sometimes it's loneliness, oftentimes it's fear, and maybe it's sadness. These are just examples. It could be none of these. But if you just take a moment to think about what emotions could overwork, overachievement, or overextending yourself be hiding. And then which of these 7 alternatives that we spoke about to hard work do you think you could choose more often? I was scared at first to do nothing, but it has been transformational in my life. I've gained clarity, strategy, vision, understanding. Other people have come in to help, and other people who really should have done it have come in to do it. It doesn't always have to be me. So that's what I really focused on, one of the ones that really helped me the most. But for you, it could be any of them. Which of these 7 alternatives to hard work do you think you could choose more often?
Geraldine says saying no.
Thank you, Geraldine.
We've had a few people drop off. I guess they have meetings. So we've had Geraldine says no. I think my perspective, probably collaboration, delegation, and support.
Thank you for sharing that, Adesi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, obviously, folks, please have more time afterwards to reflect on these. But it's worthwhile just thinking about, what could you lean into more? Thank you for those who have shared as well. It's really helpful. So the first thing that I did was I rewrote 3 of the key hidden rules sustaining my, unhelpful approach to hard work, like I said. And in doing that, I started to look at what really mattered to me and how I could create alignment between life and work. And that started with creating means goals and end goals. Many of us are pursuing means goals and not always reflecting on what our end goals actually are. And so we're doing all this work and not really achieving the things that matter to us most. So this is an exercise that I'll share with you. You can do it afterwards, just because of time. But I'll quickly introduce what means goals are. You might be familiar with it, you may not, but means goals are objectives that are valuable because they get you to your end goals. So that's things like getting a promotion, earning more money. But end goals are about the deeper life you want. So living with peace, having more flexibility with your time, spending more time with friends or family. So the next question to spend a moment reflecting on is, in pursuit of your means goals, are you sacrificing your end goals in any way? So remember, your end goals is the deeper life you want, and your means goals are the objectives that help you get there. Could you unknowingly be sacrificing end goals in any way for your means goals?
I think we probably sacrifice something. There's no comments in the chat section.
Yeah, that's fine. And the reason why this is important to reflect on is because, old and hidden rules about hard work and overwork, they often sit in the means goals section. But without audits like these, they can slowly take you away from your end goals. And Adesi said that, there's always going to be sacrifice. And not necessarily, but if there is sacrifice, you want to choose that. You want it to be because you walked into it fully aware and you said, yes, I want to make this sacrifice. So that's why this audit and reflection is helpful, because it makes you aware of what that is. And for many of us, we may not have even really sat with our end goals fully. Almost every time I do this exercise with clients, they're giving me goals that they're saying are end, but they're actually means, and they realize they don't really have many end goals. So this is a helpful exercise to do. So the fourth shift in the excellence in ease method is to understand your personal warning signals. How do you know when you have shifted into hard work that is costing you too much? I found that physical cues can be very helpful, because we may not always be fully aware of what we're feeling or have time to access what we're feeling. So noticing what's happening physically can be helpful. So for instance, are you getting tension in your jaw, your shoulders? Are you not breathing deeply enough? And then there can also be some behavioral warning signals as well. Are you becoming less patient? Are you struggling to switch off properly? Are you becoming more controlling? Are you spending your time after work just recovering? And also, are you starting to lose sight of your bigger picture and losing creativity? The final part of the excellence in ease method is to establish your restoration practices. Now, Adesi you mentioned well-being being part of how we live today, but I want to just make an important distinction between feeling less tired and well-being that restores you. Well-being that helps you feel less tired says, okay, this has given me enough to function another day. But well-being that makes you restored, makes you feel reconnected and refocused on the bigger picture and your end goals again, and it gives you renewed energy and zeal. I also want to be clear that restoration isn't necessarily about doing nothing unless that works for you. It's essentially about doing what replenishes you personally. And some things can appear like rest, like doom scrolling. But if you actually take a moment to think about, is it restoring me? Many people actually find that doom scrolling can be exhausting. You also don't have to earn restoration, and everything doesn't have to be done before you restore, which is why incorporating it into your day-to-day is so important. And you may already be very familiar with these and have mastered this, but it doesn't hurt just reminding ourselves and revisiting it again. So restoration can be across different types. It can be physical, mental, emotional, social, creative, and spiritual. And it can be small things that you do in the day that don't require much time at all, such as a walk, just taking a deep breath, or having a supportive conversation. I helped one of my clients, for instance, develop something called a shutdown ritual. And a shutdown ritual is something that happens at the end of the workday to help ease you into those restorative practices that I mentioned. And it tells your brain that work is complete for now. And what she would do at the end of each day is review what she did, write down tomorrow's task, and close all her laptop tabs and put her laptop away. And she would literally verbally say out loud, work is done for today. So another tool that you can use that is helpful, as I mentioned, in creating space, is the 3-breath pause. So in your first breath, you notice that what's happening in your body. And this can be the physical cues I mentioned before. So is your shoulder hurting? Are your jaws tight? Are you breathing properly? In your second breath, you name whatever emotions you might be feeling. And in your third breath, you choose your next action. And this is either a restorative practice or real. And real is the final micro tool I want to give you, which stands for deciding what you'll renegotiate, what you'll exit, what you'll allow, and what you'll limit, which is what you can do when you create that space and you pause. Allow is especially a key one because it gives you time to reflect on, are there things you're resisting? Are there things you actually need to allow more of in your life? So I'm going to give you a moment. I'll also send this to you afterwards so that you can do it in your own time as well. But looking back at everything you've written today, what is one thing you are choosing to protect from overwork? For instance, do you want to protect a specific end goal? Is it your peace, your health, your rest, relationships, creativity? And to protect it, will you renegotiate something, exit something, allow something, or limit anything? And this is your real choice commitment. Just one thing that you can take forward today. I'll give you a few moments to think about what that could be. What do you want to protect? In our conversations today, was there an end goal you wrote? Is there a feeling you want to protect? And how will you do that? For what real stands for, you can find it at the bottom of the slide.
Oh, we negotiate, exit, allow, and limit. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I was choosing to protect my peace, my health, rest, relationship, creativity. I'll do that by choosing my health from real and taking this one action. This is really good. You can actually put this out and put it on your wall.
What you choose, Adesi, is something from real, one of the acronyms. So for instance, I will do that by choosing renegotiation from real.
Because I am no longer willing to pay this price.
Okay, so I hope you've had a moment to think about this. I'm going to move on just because of time. We're pretty much at the end. I just want to remind you, friends, of something very important. Harvard shows us that the mere fact you are here, that you even exist, is a pure miracle. They estimate that the odds of you being born were 400 trillion to 1. So just your existence shows that you beat the odds, and your life is too precious to only be reduced to just the hard worker. And again, it's not that effort and contribution are wrong. It's that the hidden rules of hard work that we inherited keep us missing out on living and building elements of our lives. So as a reminder, instead, you could uncover the hidden rules and beliefs you were conditioned to believe about hard work. You could redefine and rewrite them for yourself and choose what you truly want. You can audit what you truly want by using end versus means goals. You could reposition things quickly if you notice that you deviated from that, using the real framework, and choose differently, using one of the alternatives as well. And then instead of always doing hard work, you could pay attention and stay tuned to yourself so that you can course correct when you need to, whether it's with the 3-breath pause, understanding your personal warning signals, and responding with some of those restoration practices we touched upon. This is what essentially gets you onto the path of what is called sustainable performance. And it's becoming increasingly important in the world we live in today. Even though we've already been through COVID, essentially it helps you look back on your life and say it was a life that was well lived, that I felt and I experienced the things that fulfilled me as well. And know that you can reclaim your leisure, your connection, your rest and meaning from the modern pressures of efficiency and productivity. You can do it. It's not done overnight, but you can make small wins. So thank you for joining me today, everyone, and being here. It's been a pleasure to meet you.